Welcome to Check Out My Dad Pod, a podcast by a dad, with dads, and for dads. My name is Mike Wickett, and in the span of a year, I went from a father of 0 to a father of 3. So after 20 years on the radio, I hung up my headphones to stay at home with my kids. And I'm here on this podcast to talk about it with you. And inside the Koss Headphone Studios, this is Check Out My Dad Pod. It's another episode of Check Out My Dad Pod. I'm Mike Wickett. Thank you so much for checking us out. Today was a very difficult day in the Mike Wickett household. Now, difficult is a relative term, and I will tell you about that coming up. But joining me right now is a guy from Milwaukee who he used to listen when I was on the Fan in Milwaukee, and we converse on Twitter and on Facebook. But he's one of the dads so far that has reached out and said, "I'd like to share my story." And it's one that is really, really important. And I think it affects more people than many want to let on. Joining me from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Baird is my guest. And Aaron, I want to first off say thank you so much for coming on. Not a lot of guys want to reach out and tell their stories. Usually I have to be the one to go fishing.
Well, thank you, Mike. I think I have a lot to say that can help people.
You really do. Instead of getting some backstory, I want to jump right in and fast forward to where you are at in life. Now, you are married with several kids, but you are a stepfather to
Correct.
Those kids, correct?
Yes, I have 3 stepchildren, 25-year-old, and then a 17 and a 15-year-old girls that live with me that I've raised since they've been 2 and 2 weeks.
Let's go, before we get into some of the more current stuff, let's go back to what it was like for you when you met your wife and the mother of these children.
Mm-hmm.
And becoming, dad, becoming a father figure. Was it weird for you? Was it awkward for you? Was it sort of comfortable because you knew that this was the woman you loved and this was going to be part of it?
Well, that's a good question, Mike. We met when I was 28, not married, never had kids. We met online through Match.com, of all places. I just happened to be living in a town where she was born in, and I was right at the 50-mile range of where we were at. So we're 49 miles apart, and I have to live a street away from where she was. So she reached out, and it was the day before the middle child, which had her second birthday. We started conversing, had her first date later that month, and never stopped. It just kind of felt right. I'm an island to myself because knowing my family thought I was nuts, and they still think I am 15 years later. And we've been doing this because, at the time, you have no kids, never married. There's a wife who's, my current wife who's been married before, has children from previous relationships, and I jump in full bore and never look back.
Was it a cannonball, or would you put your toe in, and then kind of make your way into the pool? What was it like getting into their lives and becoming this father figure that I would imagine the oldest didn't like you out of the gate?
No, he still doesn't. He was 9 at the time. But no, it's cannibal. You cannot date a woman with children without accepting them as a package. So if you're not willing to give everything and realize if you want to be with this person, whoever she is, or whatever partner I should say, to be PC, any partner that you choose to be with, if they have children, you date them as well. And you got to give them respect. And that situation, the girls were a lot young enough. Their father wasn't really much in the picture. So it was just felt natural. And as I've grown older, I believe this is what my life is supposed to be. I'm not able to have children. So this kind of was, fate kind of intervened a little bit, and they're my kids. The 2 girls call me dad, and I've raised them, like I said, since for our first date. I was pretty much there 6 days a week, almost instantly. And we moved in within a couple months and got engaged within 7 months. So married a little later.
You said the 9-year-old didn't like you then, and it doesn't sound
No,
like he
we don't
likes
get
you
along.
much right now. Was it because you're not dad? Was there a reason why? Because I know there's a lot of dads, that are in your situation that come into relationships and they're not the dad. They're the stepfather, and sometimes it's a match made in heaven. Sometimes the kids are so young they don't know any difference, or sometimes they're so old they don't care. But 9, that's a different age.
No, he has some behavioral mental health issues, from oppositional defiance and paranoia, and he's really close. He was living with his father and raised by his father. So I never tried to replace his father at all. It was just, and he only visited us. So it's a different relationship to start with. But as he aged, his mental health became very destructive to himself and to property. So he would act out in rage, and he put his guitar through the wall, and smashed his guitar pretty well right through the garage, through the wall. He got into huffing, got into hard drugs later, and it's just not in him. Substance abuse with medications and taking medications. And he was here when my kids were witnessing, where he'd take a whole bottle, a muscle relaxer, and then we had to get the ambulance called and get stretchered out of here. And so it was very difficult, because I always had to be the bad cop, because my wife it's her son, so she's always trying to protect him, and I'm the bad cop, and I'm just trying to hold everything together. So it's not a good relationship. We don't even talk anymore. And the last time I saw him, I signed over a title to my truck, and I haven't seen him in 2 years. So
wow.
He needed a car, and he needed something, and I've gave him shelter a few times, but now he's at 25. He's starting to live on his own. So
do you communicate with his dad at all? Is that relationship non-existent as well?
No, when he was in middle school back in, he was 10, 11, 12, we had little communication, but basically it was just when we did exchanges for visitation purposes, or when we were dealing with school with IEPs and, or hospitalizations or something like that. That'd be the only time we really would discuss things. But as he got older, I'm just protecting his name from.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But as he got older, especially when he got 15, 16, and his mental health took over, it got worse, and he got a lot more aggressive, and then self-harming, and then got into huffing. I mean, he took a 20-pound propane tank, broke into my garage door, took a brand new propane tank, and huffed the whole thing in my house, and almost blew up my house because I was at near explosive levels of propane. So we had the fire department here for that. Took medication. He would steal anything he could get his hands on. There's a lot going on, like I said, oppositional defiance disorder, ADHD. We believe he's bipolar as well. He's never been diagnosed with that. But and he's off that.
Does his mom? Does he spend any time with his mom? Does she go visit him, or is it just wipe your hands clean?
He doesn't want to speak with her right now due to he had a girlfriend, and his girlfriend and him were here for an Easter dinner. And they went to the mall, Brookfield Mall, Brookfield Square, and they got busted for shoplifting with my kids around. So that was the last time we really spoke with him.
Sure.
Because that was not an environment I want the girls to be around in. And so he's pretty much ceased communication. And for right now, that's a good thing. There's enough going on. I don't need to. That's one thing that's better left be. As I can get into farther as we go down, I have enough on my plate. So
yeah, and we definitely will get into more. It's not just dealing with the son who's got some mental health problems and is seemingly excommunicated you from his life. How do you and the other two? So they're 8 years apart between the oldest and the middle child, and 10 years apart from the oldest from the son to the youngest daughter.
Yep.
How do you, as you're still trying to raise two younger girls, communicate with them about his behavior as they grow into young kids, adolescents, and young adults?
It's very difficult. Now, the girls listen to me as their dad because they've known me since they've been 2 and 2 months. So at least have that bond so I can speak as a parent and not as a step parent, because that's all they know. So when you tell them, it's very simple. This is not behavior that's normal. And they could recognize it. I mean, when he takes my wife's medication and empties an entire bottle and in one time, and he's falling all over the place, we have hospitals come. My kids have seen both him and my wife, once I'll get to, many, many times stretchered out of this house. So they've been traumatized for a long time. So now, unfortunately, as we get to today, they've already seen it all. There's nothing that can scare these kids. But you try to tell them even in the beginning, this isn't right. And they know better. They know it's not normal behavior. And that's pretty much it. You talk to them as people. You don't try to coddle them. It's more like this. This isn't right. They know it isn't right. They're the ones even reporting behavior that's out of normal. And then, when you see something, they just let me know. So that's how we handled it back then. I don't know if it's the right way to doing it, but it was more of he was only visiting, maybe a week at a time during summer and every other weekend. So a lot of times it was more of just hopefully we don't have an incident this weekend, and we can just get through today, get through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday when he goes home, and then we can get back to normal. So
when these incidents are going on and they look to you, do they look to dad, or are you dad?
I am dad.
Your dad. Do they have any relationship at all with their father, or are you?
Their biological?
Yeah.
Yes, they do. He's been in and out of jail. He's an alcoholic. And so when the youngest one was born, he was actually in serving time, and he was on leave. And ironically, it was the night that my wife called because he came back drunk, and it's called the PO, sent him back to finish out his time. And then she reached out to me the next day.
Wow.
Match. So there was no timeline. It was just bam, bam, bam.
There was no break.
Then,
there was no break there whatsoever.
No break. We just go full speed.
Yeah.
And so, like the youngest one, I said, she was born in February. We met in early March. Our first day was end of March, so she was a month old when we actually met.
You literally are Matt LaFleur. You are all gas, no break with this relationship.
That's right, Matt, all gas, no break. I mean, I was there for both one. I was there for her christening. The first time I met my future in-laws was holding the 2-year-old at the christening of the youngest one. That was the first time they met me, and they was like, "What's wrong with this guy? He must be nuts." That was my first time my mother-in-law said to me. So, but yeah, they live. I mean, the girls know me as dad. Their biological dad is, we're the only family he has up here. All his family's from out of state. He's originally from out of state, and he moved up here with my wife when they moved back. And so he was in and out of jail. So you'd see him for visitation. He's working a lot, so you'd only see him on visitation. Then in 2009, he got a DUI and did 2.5. And he got out on the day before Thanksgiving 2011 and moved into my house.
I'm sorry, what? The biological father of the 3 kids, 2 of whom that call you father.
2 youngest. The biological father, the youngest, not the oldest. They have separate dads.
Gotcha.
Sorry. The youngest 2 of the girls have it.
So the biological father of the 2 daughters who refer to you as dad that you raised got out of jail and stayed with you. How did you explain that?
It was my decision.
Okay.
Because again, we are the only family he has. Even when when he was doing his time, my wife actually was POA for his finances because he has nobody else.
Wow. There are not a lot of people, and I think this speaks about you and your wife. Yeah. There are not a lot of people that would have done that have gone the extra mile, that, so many people. And I understand his relationship to your kids, but a lot of people just would have said, he's SOL, he's out on his own. And you didn't do that. Why?
2 things. One, at the time, my wife wasn't working. I was on food stamps. I was scraping by just to keep a roof over our heads, paying every bill I could with one income when we're a 2-income household. He used to work 2 full-time jobs, even as alcoholic. So he had a work ethic. And the biggest thing was they were going to put him on the streets. There was no place to put him. It was the day before Thanksgiving, and literally we were the only family he had. So I had my wife, and I said, the oldest one moved out the day before. I cleaned the room, and he moved in the next day. We did all gas, no break.
I guess so, man. My goodness.
So I worked the thing out with the girl's biological grandfather, his dad, to basically he was paying me rent. And he showed up. It was November 23rd, 2011, to be exact. And he came with an 8-inch by 8-inch box. This is a guy who used to have multiple homes, worked 2 full-time jobs, had lost everything because of alcoholism. Got clean in jail, finally. And he's still clean to this day, which is awesome. We think he is, or at least not. He hasn't had his slip-ups, let's put it that way. But he at least, he got here with an 8-inch by 8-inch box and the clothes on his back that didn't even fit him. So I took the last $100 out of my savings. I went to Walmart and had to buy the man clothes.
What?
I mean, I had to buy him socks, underwear, shirts, T-shirts, pants, everything I could find at Walmart. I took the last $100 of my savings and bought him that. Because he had nothing, literally nothing.
Wow.
And so he was here till September 1st of 2012.
Oh, goodness.
We had an extra, my father-in-law was passed away at the time, so we had an extra car sitting here. We gave him clothes, we gave him our laptop, got him an opportunity. He found a job, and he's still at the company right now, doing very well. But we gave him an opportunity. And, the thing is, with life, anything, it's all about opportunity. What do you do with it? So me reaching out to you to talk my story is me taking opportunity. So if anybody listens to this, whenever an opportunity presents itself, you don't know what it is, seize it. Here's an opportunity for me to do something. I was raised in a very strong Catholic household. Most Christian thing I could do and the most selfless thing I thought I could do at that time. Yeah. I felt real proudful. It's like we had a decent relationship at that time anyways. It wasn't adversarial. And for a while, he was one of my, closer people to talk to because, we're 2 years apart in age. But the best thing was the day he came home and those girls came off the bus, because he was here before the bus came on, the girls come home and they open up and he's standing there in the doorway and they didn't know. And you can see their eyes light up and they had their daddy back for a little bit. So they call me dad and they call him daddy. So we know who to distinguish between. And even to this day, he still lives, he moved farther away. For a few years, he lived out off of Greenfield in West Allis, and now he just bought a house up in Belgium. But so they do see him a little bit, but now the kids being teenagers and in high school and working, they see him maybe 3-4 times a year. But it was no visitation. So whenever you want to see the kids, or whenever the kids want to go, they take a car and they go. They still have. I want to push that. Go. Want to see him? Go. So.
I want to talk about what it was like raising the 2 girls as dad,
Sure.
but I don't think it's fair to tell that story until we know more about your relationship with your wife. And
sure.
So we've hit alcoholism, we've hit mental health issues, we've hit a lot of heavy stuff. And while the girls are growing up from 2 and 2 months to now 17 and 15, I think it's fair to say you recently learned about another behavior, this time from your wife. And this one is maybe scarier than anything else that you've discussed so far in the 15 minutes that I've had you on.
It's only been that long. We can go for 2 hours here. I hope you have enough time.
The babies might start crying soon, so.
I hope not. So I met my wife in 2005. We married in 2007. And a little after we got married, we were trying to have kids. So she had a surgery because she had scar tissues from previous surgery. So we did a surgery and they put her on Vicodin. And at the time, that started her addiction to painkillers. The doctor was giving her 300 count a month. What? That was in 2008. Yep, 300 count a month.
Whoa, okay.
So we were well beyond Brett Favre level.
Yeah, I got 7 for my wisdom teeth, I think.
So that started it. And it really, I weaned her off once before, and she had lots of other ailments, but it started her slow journey to painkiller addiction. It stayed there for quite some time. She'd always have an ailment. Either it was a tendon or a foot or a tooth. So she always had some kind of ailment to keep going with the pain. And that subsequently led to, we had gallbladder surgery. There was more pain killers. We've had a lot of GI issues because of all the pain killers over the years. She's got tooth decay issues, genetics. So she lost half her teeth. So she had root canals. We had 7 root canals in 1 year. You can imagine how much painkillers, and we had joint issues. We had a shoulder surgery. You had elbow surgery for tendons. So you always had some type of medical issue that was coming up. And part of it was, there were real ailments, but she was doctor shopping, getting multiple pills, buying them wherever she could.
Is that a thing? Sorry to interrupt. Is that something you can do in Wisconsin? You can still doctor shop, or maybe not now,
not
but
as much
at that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
In the early 2000s or 2010s, you could. But once they really restricted the hydrocodone, the Percocets, and all that became really controlled, that's when it got worse.
Gotcha.
And so she was struggling with this. She'd go through work for 6-9 months and lose a job because of attendance, because her health was going bad, because she would take these medications, and you'd have ailments of just couldn't sleep, or sleeping too much, and stomach and GI. So we kind of had this cycle. She would work, she'd not work. She would work, she would not work. She had attendance issues, and it really it came to a head August 2015. My mother-in-law passed away, and what happened is my wife found her. So my wife was diagnosed with clinical depression well before that, and We had some other medication, clinical depression, but that's all they knew at that time. So in the end of August of 2015, my wife was taking the youngest one to visit grandma for the weekend. Opened the door, found the cat, turned the door, and here's my mother-in-law passed away. And that was the PTSD trigger that sent the spiral started. My wife that night, that before she even called the officers, she admitted to me later, she took every pain medication my mother-in-law had, kept them for herself, and tried to overdose that night on painkillers and Ambien. That night led to her do a thing called sleep driving. I was asleep. She somehow, in her pajamas, got up, walked, grabbed her purse, thought she was company, got in our car, which is a manual transmission, and drove from Brookfield into the south side into the third ward, opened the doors at 2:00 in the morning, went into her old office and started working for a little while, including trying to do a showing for someone who was sleeping at 4:00 in the morning.
That's for those that don't know, that's about a 25, 30 minute trip from that part of Milwaukee suburbs into downtown.
Yeah. So in a manual transmission in the middle of the night in your PJs, while completely overdosed on painkillers and sleeping medication. This was all caught on video.
On video?
So, oh yeah, because it was, well, she somehow got home and went back to bed, and I never knew it. And then we get a phone call a couple days later, and it's the police department for B&E, for breaking and entering.
Oh my!
And they charged her with 4 felonies, and she had to go in the Milwaukee County Jail and got booked for a weekend.
And she doesn't remember any of it?
Nope.
Wow.
So fortunately, I had an attorney, and because we actually could document this, and even they realized, I mean, it's not normal behavior to have somebody walking around in their pajamas at 2:00 in the morning. We were able to get it's called deferred prosecution agreement. So the charges were dropped and scrubbed from a record, but it cost, $5,000 for the attorney and a whole bunch of other stuff. And that was another PTSD trigger. Like I said, she tried to overdose on painkillers. And at that time, she went back for nursing. And around that, in late 2015, early 2016, she got into cocaine. And that was because she was doing nursing school to stay awake, and then got into heroin. And never shooting, but always snorting. But I never knew this.
So while she's going to school, while she's working, I assume this was a time when she would have been working.
Yep, she was working as a CNA at the time.
You didn't. I think people are listening to this thinking, how did you not notice? I think people that are high have a certain look to them when they are high. Other people, like I know people that can walk around high and, it's just like it's another day. It's like a functioning alcoholic who can drink 25 beers in a day and still be, normal. How did you not notice the woman that you loved was high 24, 36 hours straight?
It's conditioning. Remember, she's been taking these painkillers since 2007. So by this time, we're 8-9 years. So it's become such a learned behavior. And what happens is the family unit, mom's always sick. Mom's not available. So I'm picking up all the slack. I already do all the cooking, all the cleaning, all the shopping. I already take care of almost all the bills because my partner is not reliable. So because of that, I'm having to, we're all picking up. The kids already know mom's not reliable because mom's always sick. And that's what you said, mom's sick. And you move on. You can't stop. You just got to keep moving on. And I wasn't aware of what the signs were. Okay. So like I said, in 2016, she started using cocaine and heroin, and I didn't even know. She hid it from me that well.
Wow. Do your kids ever come to you and say, Mom might be sick, but she's acting weird? Or is it just laser focused?
Did, but not yet. Not at that time.
Okay.
So let me get you to 2017. June 2nd, 2017, 2:44 p.m. I get a phone call at work. My wife says, I'm sick and I need help. Like I said, the time is burned into my memory because of my picking up that call. It was a Friday. And I didn't know what it was. I'm like, oh, we can get help here. She's like, no, I need help. I need to go away. Now, she was working for St. Luke's, so we had insurance to cover all this stuff. And she already placed a place in Georgia. So like I said, it's June of 2017. And I get home at 5 o'clock and make a phone call. They tell me it's substance abuse. I still don't even know what she's taking at this time. Talk to the admitted counselor. He's like, no, she really needs it. She needs to go. So at 6 a.m. on that Saturday morning, I dropped her off at the airport, and she was gone for 192 days, returning on December 12th. And this is where my real story starts.
Now it can begin in December of 2017. Okay, now it can start. So she comes back from treatment, and she's supposed to be, and I hate using the word better, because it's a mental health issue, it's a drug addiction out there. I don't think you're ever better, especially at this point. Go on.
Well, she went 30 days in Georgia, and that was just to get detox. And at that time, I found out she was actually doing speedballs, heroin, and cocaine. And she actually wiped out her entire savings and left me with $1,000 debt.
In the facility, she snuck
right before.
Oh,
she was
right before.
She was actually going through detox when she made the phone call. She had an epiphany and got clean. And then she went to California for her finishing treatment out there, and got really active in the treatment community, and was doing very, very, very well. And at that time, they diagnosed her with bipolar 2, major depressive disorder, PTSD, and now disabling anxiety, and which is what they believe was the root for the entire thing, going all the way back to 2007, was her anxiety about work and stress is why she was using the painkillers to numb all the anxiety so she could function. And she was a functioning, like you say, a functioning alcoholic. She was she was always, never doped out of her mind or, stressed out. That was coming. That's coming. So the first time, I never saw it. I never saw her overdose. I never seen her or anything. She took pills to go to sleep, sometimes an overdose on the pills to sleep, hopefully never to wake up, but I never noticed it. And she just wake up the next day. So you never know the difference. It was completely hidden the whole time. And I was naive to look at the warning signs.
And the whole time, you're the father of her 2 children from a previous marriage or a previous relationship. And you are... Boy, talk about a lot of responsibility on a dad in the first place, to be that father figure, to raise 2 girls, because we really have no idea what we're talking about, especially when they're getting into their teenage years, Katie bar the door, and you don't see it, you're oblivious to it, but for good reason.
This thing actually for me was that she was gone, because that gave me the opportunity to go in. There's a group, it's called Naranon, and it's like you have NA for Narcotics Anonymous, you have AA for Alcoholics Anonymous. This is for the families. Okay. Now I can't really describe it. I can't, because of the creed and oath, I can't really describe it any farther than that. But it is a group that allowed me to have the foundation to realize, one, you're not alone. And the 12th step, if anyone knows what the 12th step is, this is what my 12th step is today, Mike. You're giving me the opportunity for me to share my story to someone who's listening that says, you're not alone. There's always someone listening, and there's always someone there. Just make it known that you need help, and they'll help you.
Wow. And I am honored that I am your 12th step. And
it was an opportunity to spread my voice larger than just putting on Facebook to your group of friends. That
well, I hope the message carries far and wide here on the podcast. So. That's amazing. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. You earned it. But during my wife's time, my daughter at the time was middle school age, and she has bipolar, now actually borderline personality disorder, bipolar, PTSD, major depressive disorder. And she had an episode with my wife being gone, not being a teenager, mom's gone. They're figuring out that mom has substance abuse. We didn't tell the kids at that time what it was, but man, they never saw her overdose. They didn't know what was going on. So she went into an eating disorder. We had 2 suicide attempts that I had to deal with. This is all during the time my wife's gone. And I'm handling this and still working full time and trying to take everything together.
What do you do for a living, Aaron, that you
have? Industrial sales.
Okay.
I have a great boss. It'll be 12 years tomorrow I've been there. I have a great boss that allowed me to do this. And as when you have like newborns, and you're at work, they understand there might be days that your head might hit the desk and you're sleeping. My boss, there's a couple times where I was out cold by being awake but not listening, just being completely blown away. And he's like, do what you can do. Take care of you. We'll get to tomorrow.
So what you're telling me is, under the umbrella of your wife going through all of this, the line down and over, your daughter is having mental health challenges.
Yep.
As all of this is going on, dad's not really in the picture. Your dad.
Yep. Yeah. And I have no support, no family in town, nobody in Tommy.
Where's your family?
My folks live out of state.
Okay. Wow.
Out of state. So we have no immediate family in the area at all. And we have not many people. So it was all on me to take care of. Fortunately, because mom was never around when they were, even at the early middle school age,
yeah,
the kids were told to be independent and how at least be trustworthy, where I could at least trust them to, it's like, hey, you get off work at 4, I get off work at 5, you're home at 4, take care of the dogs, stay in the house, watch TV, and I can trust them to do that, because there's no other options. I mean, it was on me to do everything, but I have a great boss that allowed me the flexibility. If I needed time off, I could take time off. If I had to go to meetings, I can go to meetings. If I had to meet with, we used to have, with my wife's in treatment, I'd have weekly calls with her counselor and we'd have group therapy sessions so I could understand her, because I didn't know anything about her addiction. It wasn't until she was 3 weeks in did I find out what she was using. And then I found some paraphernalia, and after the fact, once I cleaned out the car, but that 6 months was the most beneficial time for me, because I was able to learn about it at least enough and have a foundation of people, a support group to help me. And then she came back, and first year we're clean. She even spoke at my meeting with 1 year clean.
What was it like parenting as a father with mom coming back? You have one daughter who doesn't have mental health challenges. You have the other daughter who is. I mean, you're spinning plates like the NBA playoff bubble is going to be spinning plates to try to keep everything going. But how are you parenting at this point? How are you being a dad?
You just go through each day. You don't worry about tomorrow. You worry about today. You worry about what my challenge is in front of me, and I'll deal with that. And when I get done with that, I'll go to something else. Routines, as any new parent with toddlers will know, routines are your friend. Once you get into routines, kids love routines. They love order. So once you stay on that, it's like we come home. I come home, check their homework. I start supper. We eat at 6:30-ish every night. Then they have the opportunity to take their showers and they can watch some TV and they have some free time. And that's when I can start decompressing. My time's in the morning. I'm a morning person, so I'm up at 4 a.m. every day. And that's the first 2 hours a day are for me. They're not for anybody else. They're for me to do whatever I want to do. And that's how I can keep sanity. Like I said, I was raised in a very strong Catholic household. So I do have a foundation of faith and I do believe in that as my higher power. Sorry, it's a little, if you ever know anything about anybody recovery, when you see higher power, that's part of it. But that's what I believe. So it gives me a foundation of, like I said, faith, put my wife together. And there's one thing my late mother-in-law told me, and it was the week before she passed away. She goes, whatever you do, protect those kids.
Yeah.
And I promised her. So now I can't go back on it. And that's what I'm still doing each day. That was always my creed, was whatever happens, protect the girls.
So sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead.
The first year goes by and everything is A-okay. And I imagine that the relationship between the daughters and mom are trying to regrow.
It is.
And then things kind of change.
Yes. I mean, the problem with my wife is the treatment she had in California is not the same that's here in Wisconsin. Okay. The type of California is the treatment capital of the world for a reason. It's a perfect location so people can be very serene. And also it was started there. So the foundation there's many meetings and it's a different type of teaching. Coming up here, they teach you like a different way. So she wasn't relating to it. And my wife didn't find the support groups up here immediately, including a sponsor, to keep her on it. So she was on her own for a year. And somehow, some way, in May of last year, in 18, she had a slip up. She used, it was, one time. And she had a couple of those through 2018. But it wasn't until February of 2019 that she fell off the wagon. And that's when I finally got to see my wife overdose on heroin for the first time. I found her slumped over. Light was on. Her phone light was on. She was slumped over, barely breathing, and had to call 911. My kids were in bed downstairs. Our bedroom's upstairs. Had to call the officers. They had to give her Narcan to revive her, multiple times in Narcan. And then she'd go to the hospital. She actually had to go to ICU for 2 days because her heart rate was so low. and she was at about a 30 pulse rate when I found her. And when I was home, I was just downstairs, and she went upstairs to go to bed and used. So that was in February. She was clean for 3 weeks, had another one on the follow that, 3 weeks later, again, heroin, caused her to overdose again, same location, slumped over the bed, laid on. And once you see me repeating this, this becomes my PTSD trigger now, because I found her. It ends up being 5 times. Wife did 30 days up in a state issued for clean to try to get clean. And then we get to July 9th of 2019. I was at an event. It's my favorite event of the year. I was gone all day. And I noticed that I got a thing on my phone that says, your iPad was unlocked. And I'm like, that's kind of weird. I mean, it's 8:30 at night, and no one really knows my code, but my wife did. And what she was doing is she was recording a suicide video. I still have it on this iPad that I have every day. It's saved for a reason. I've never watched it all the way through. She went and spent instead of the rent money, she spent the entire over $1,000 on heroin and ingested a lethal amount. I came home at 12:04 a.m., found her hunched over, the heroin running down her nose. She was breathing 3 breaths per minute. The average person breathes about 20 breaths per minute. I had 911 on the phone. My kids were sleeping downstairs. I had to give my wife CPR and mouth to mouth in my bed while on the phone with 911. Now, this time the officers came a few times. These officers came a few times already between my daughter's issues and my wife's previous issues. So I already had everything cleared out. They gave her 6 doses of Narcan. And we emptied the entire supply that the police department had, plus they had to give her an IV to revive her. 5 minutes later, she'd been dead.
So how, as the only sober parent in the relationship with 2 girls who are teenagers, and I, one of these days I'll learn what it's like to raise teenage girls. It doesn't sound very fun, but I imagine this was a very difficult. Then again, let me back up. I don't know if it was a difficult time, because this wasn't the first time that the police had been to your house, that the ambulance had been to your house, that that their mother, your wife, had gone through something like this.
Yep.
What was the conversation like the next morning?
My youngest one has seen it so many times that she's desensitized. I mean, I think we had 11 ambulance calls in 2019 total. And between my daughter and my wife, and we had, I think, 8 the year before. I'm trying to remember them all. But they, like anything in life, the more you go through it, you know what to do. So when this happened, it was the 5th major relapse overdose that my wife took in 2019. The girls were downstairs. They heard me, scream my wife's name. And that is what my still trigger is. So whenever I find my wife slumped over due to her narcolepsy, or, just where she sleeps and she has a look on her face when I find her in the morning, now I still wake her up and make sure she responds to me. That's my PTSD trigger I have to deal with. But at that time, the girls didn't understand. They never understood how serious it was. I mean, they came up there, they saw Mom, it was bad, and they saw me giving her. They came upstairs, and I had 911. And I just told them, I said, answer these phone calls, and I'm giving my wife breaths in her mouth, because she's not breathing enough. And like I said, 5 minutes later, they said she'd been dead because of suffocation, because she was slumped over her shoulder, so she's face down, crushing her entire lungs, and she's only breathing 3 times a minute in agonal breathing. And so that night I had her involuntarily admitted to mental health, because obviously we had a video, and we had a note that she also left behind, which I never read. I gave it to the officers and told them I never want to see it. The video I copied and gave it to the officers. Like I said, I have the video. I still save it. I've never listened to the whole thing through. I got a couple minutes through and it was too much.
Do your kids know about the video?
Yeah, they do. They know there's a video. And because I said the middle child, the oldest daughter, she's attempted suicide multiple times with her mental health. And so again, it's not nice to say it's desensitized, but it's your body's natural way of protecting itself in your mind, is that you've gone through so much trauma that you just basically become blank to it, and you start focusing on what do I have to do today and get back to your routines. So, they knew mom was sick. They knew she was going to be gone. I told, they knew it was bad. I said, I told them, go back to bed. I'll take care of it. I went to the hospital that night. I had her admitted. And then I came back home. The kids were still up. Just told them, said, Mom overdosed. I didn't lie to them. I didn't have to lie to them. They saw it. I mean, they're teenagers at this time. They know, but
that's
also,
the thing too, man. If they were 6, mom overdosed doesn't mean anything. But if you're 16,
yeah, you've seen it, and they've gone through the DARE program and everything, and they know what's right and what's wrong. And I'm fortunate, hopefully, being the one person that's been this sober one and trying to hold everything together, that when they get older, hopefully they appreciate what I've been doing, and hopefully, they understand that when everything's going around, I'm still trying my best to hold everything together and try to be a sense of normalcy. Well, their dad's an alcoholic and their mom becomes an addict, but she became, the thing about her is she became an addict late in life. So that's unique for addicts. Usually they start in the teenage years because they can't cope, they don't know how to cope. And that's what I'm worried about. My oldest daughter is that, she's seen all this stuff. Well, she's still scared of it, but that's something back in my mind, that because of her mental ease, if she ever attempts, she'll be the one that unfortunately I don't think will get pull through. My wife was fortunate. I was there to save her. And that the next day was July 10th, and she was still messed up 36 hours later. It wasn't until July 11th that I could actually see her. And I asked her, I said, do you want to live? And she cried in my arms and said, yes, I do. And to this day, she's clean.
Good. That was my next question. Has she stayed clean? And you brought up something I was going to touch on too. I mean, sure. Knowing what has been in their past, mm-hmm. and their peers, do you have conversations with your daughters about their future? Do they talk to you? Do they talk to her about it for her firsthand knowledge? And the same goes for you?
At this point, no. Part of it, I think, is the age with girls. I mean, they're 17 and 15 now. They don't really want to talk to dad too much about anything in their life. I'm more worried about the youngest one because she keeps everything inside. The middle one, the oldest girl, she's an extrovert. So she's the opposite. So she'll let you know what she's feeling because you'll hear it. So it's very easy to read how she's feeling. It's just the youngest one is an introvert. So she hides everything. So you don't know if it's really traumatizing her or not. I am worried because, they do have a genetic dispensation towards addiction. Both their parents are addicts of either alcoholism or hard drugs. And it's, I've seen it run in families. And with my therapy, I've seen it run through, through other people, and realize, it's a disease. And once you realize it's a disease, you can start treating it as a medical disease and not just a behavioral issue. It's not a learned behavior or something like that, but it's actually a mental disease. And you actually have to go through many, many, many steps just to basically rewrite your brain. My wife was fortunate. When she got clean, she got out, the very first meeting she went to, she got a sponsor. And I think that was a linchpin for her to keep going, because she had somebody of her own peer group as a woman. It's very hard, especially in Wisconsin, to find women sponsors. And to find one that's willing to take her on and make her go through the steps again, what she already did once before, but hold her accountable, I think was the key. Because when she was the most vulnerable, there was somebody there that said, I'm here to help. How can I help you? And then now my wife is, 5 meetings. She actually is she does area which is like an overboard from all the other little meetings to like distribute literature and stuff like that. And he's a treasurer for one other group, and that's her life. And she's disabled because of her anxiety, but this is now replaced and giving her meaning and hope, and gives her a purpose, which I think is what a lot of people that are addicts don't have. Is they don't have that view of, my life's worthless. I don't mean anything. It's not worth living. Well, now she's got something to live for. So I try to encourage that every day. Even with the girls moving forward, we try not to talk about it. They've seen it. We don't need to repeat it. We don't want to relive it. It's there in their life.
Do you think they got cheated out of anything from their ages? From youth to teenage years, because maybe mom wasn't there or you couldn't be there because you were dealing with. Did they feel like they got cheated?
That's my biggest regret. I think they got cheated out of a good childhood. I really do. And there's nothing I can do about it. Time doesn't stop for anybody. And, you have young kids at home, so take every minute you can, because within a blink of an eye, they'll be in school. And then once they start school, the rocket sled starts, and then they're in high school and they're gone. Once they get out of middle school, once high school starts, that's going downhill with a rocket strapped to your back, because they grow so much in middle school, but then once they get in high school, it's just gone. I mean, both my kids, that when I graduated 8th grade, I was the only parent there. My wife, I was the only one there. So now my oldest one is a senior this year, so she should be graduating in June, and hope this year, God willing, we'll all be there, so she can walk across the aisle, and get her diploma. So I do think, especially with the mental health, the middle daughter, or the oldest daughter, has gone through, it's really sapped a lot of her adolescence years. Her high school years have not been good for her. I mean, we've been going on for 6 years now.
Yeah.
Of mental health issues and self-harm and, suicide attempts and stuff like that, and seeing her mom. So they've been traumatized. And one thing that we do, and especially with therapy, is it's called Just for Today in the group. You worry about today. Okay. Part of, any type of addiction, anyone who knows addiction will know about Just for Today. So we're going to do Just for Today. We're going to worry about today for today. What tomorrow happens is tomorrow happens. And that's really how I have to live each life. And that's how I choose to live my life today. I cannot worry about what's tomorrow because it's not written. So I want to do everything I can today to get through today. And when I wake up tomorrow, I'll worry about tomorrow then. And that's how addicts go through life. And that's how we've had to change our lives. I don't plan what's going to happen 10 years down the road. I can't. I have to live today. And it takes a different perspective. And that's how I can rationalize and keep myself sane through all this insanity. And then sharing, like I'm doing right now with you, is a way for me to express to other people, listen, I'm not the worst. There's other people worse than me. I still have my wife here. I haven't buried her. There's people I know in this area that have buried siblings and spouses. So anybody that listens to this, I hope, you're not alone. There's always somebody listening. Just, if you need help, there's someone there. Just ask.
Aaron, I want to thank you, man. This story about being a father through all of this, a husband through all of this, a partner through all of this, a confidant. I mean, this is the longest interview I've done on Check Out My Dad Pod, and it's for a darn good reason.
Sorry.
You talk a lot. No, it's for a darn good reason. It's because it's a very important topic. So I want to thank you very much for coming on. It is an honor to have you. It is good to finally catch up with you, and thank you for sharing your story about this, and congratulations to getting to this point. And I know that you don't want to hear congratulations because, like you said, you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. But I think that people listening right now are impressed by you, are proud of you. And again, thank you so much for sharing your story on this week's Check Out My Dad Pod.
Thanks, Mike. The pleasure's all mine.
Thanks for listening to Check Out My Dad Pod. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and wherever you find yours. Thanks to the band from Silverman Sound Studios. And if you have any feedback, feel free to find us on Facebook. Search Mike Wickett Podcasts, or you can send me an email, MikeWickettPodcasts@gmail.com.